Welcome to the BOBCAST episode 17, where we are going to talk about dragons.
Good morning.
I think about saying that in videos sometimes, but it's like, who knows when somebody's actually watching a video.
I don't care. I'm drinking tea, so it's morning.
Wow. Definitely gonna cut some of that one. Gotta leave a little, just contractually obligated at this point, I feel like. But so yeah, we're here to talk about dragons. There was this really cool new book that came out about dragons, so it's kind of on the brain, right? People gotta hear it. And hey, it is half of the game, right? There's dungeons, there's dragons.
Yeah,
we haven't even talked about dungeons yet.
Maybe that should be our next one.
It's taken until episode 17 to talk about dragons. Hey, but here we are. What's one cool thing that you thought about dragons before reading this book?
Man, I don't even know why I was so obsessed with dragons as a kid anymore. Like, was it just because they were the most mystical? But they weren't even, because I knew about unicorns.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word mystical, but I would just say the most, like, impressive and legendary.
Yeah.
They're so powerful.
They're the coolest.
Yeah. They're kind of like not specifically, but I'm going to say a chimera type animal, because, like, they're a mixture of things, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're just, like, purely its own creation. Like a unicorn, it's a horse with a thing on its head.
Well, I mean, a dragon's just a giant lizard.
But it's not, because it has an extra set of limbs that are wings. And there's no lizards like that in the real world. And it breathes fire. And it likes treasure? Like what? And it's not like a typical chimera that's literally just like you have a lion head, but like goat arms. I don't know what a chimera is, but...
It has the head of a lion, the head of a goat, and traditionally
like
also
right?
the head of a dragon.
Oh, okay.
But, like, I think most representations show it with, like, a snake tail. At least that's what it's like in Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dragon's Dogma, my favorite dragon.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite video game villain of all time. Gregory.
Yeah, I was about
to
say, this is a huge twist for the podcast, where normally, whenever we'll mention Greg, it's referring to...
Well, okay. His name is Grigori.
Oh, come on. But it's Gregory.
I could just never get over that his name's Greg.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly, let's be real. It's a ridiculous name for a dragon.
Yeah.
At least compared to what you think about with D&D dragons, where it's all names you can't pronounce.
Oh, man. There's a whole section in Fizban's about naming your dragon.
How does that go?
There's a huge table.
Good.
And it's just a bunch of different things that you can't pronounce.
Oh.
And then you roll like a d20 or something, and you 3 times to get
3d20.
3 things.
Like 3 like syllables or something?
Well, each one is more than 1 syllable.
Oh, wow.
They can be really long names.
So it's just nonsense sections of words.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I didn't read that section specifically, but I watched a cool video by a friend of the channel, Anto of Icarus Games, who specifically commented about that part of the book, saying how it kind of leads saying that, hey, dragon names are often hard to pronounce, so like you shouldn't really do that if you're going to create a dragon. But then here's this table of a bunch of fragments of words that will create an unpronounceable name.
I think Fizban's actually recommends that you come up with like an epithet or another name.
Blank blank the Defiler.
Yeah, so it's like dragons call each other by their unpronounceable names, but quote lesser creatures would call them by their moniker.
I like that. And it makes me think how there was, I don't remember if this was in Fizban's or if this was in one of the other dragon stat blocks I read in a little prep for this video, but it said one kind of regional effect feature would be that if anyone speaks the name of the dragon within like a mile, it hears anything like said from that, like within a 5-foot radius of like where that was spoken for the next like minute or something.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool effect.
Yeah. I'm probably going to use that one.
Yeah.
For
like
one of my dragons.
And it's very neat, like true namey, like fantasy magic to me. Like if you know that name, maybe that is like it grants you a little bit of a, well, actually it's almost worse, I guess, for you.
Yeah.
Depending on what your intentions are seeing this dragon. Yeah. For me, I would say favorite thing about dragons. I don't know if I really had an answer to that, to be honest, before reading this book. Yeah, prior to D&D, though, biggest dragon influence, probably just The Hobbit, I guess. The big
Good
guy.
old
Smaug.
Smaug.
Yeah.
Which is Bened Smaug Smaugerbach.
No. Well, yeah, I guess if the new movie. I don't know. I don't consider the Hobbit movies much of anything.
I was gonna say that Grigori had the worst design of all dragons. Well, I like the character. I think the design is terrible because too many fingers.
Wait, whoa. How many fingers does he? What is that supposed to mean?
His wings have like, you know how normally a bat wing or a dragon wing would have like 4 like finger-like things.
Yeah.
Grigori has at least like 6 on each wing.
Whoa.
So it's kind of gross.
Does he have 6 toes on his other limbs?
I don't know. I never counted because the only time you see his toes is when you're fighting him and then you're kind of
stomped.
like busy, you know?
Yeah. One thing I shouldn't say always, but in the time that I've played D&D, I've disliked about dragons is the fact that in D&D they're always featured and distinctly like true dragons, quote unquote, have 4 limbs and 2 wings. Because doesn't make sense. Like every creature that has wings are its front limbs evolved into those wings.
Yeah.
So to have
but
6
dragons
is
didn't evolve, Bob. They were created.
Yeah, I mean they're magical.
By Tiamat and the other one.
Bahamut?
Yes.
Bahamut? I don't know how you say it.
And the new 3rd one.
What? Oh, a gem one too, I guess?
Yeah, the ruby dragon.
That's it? They just called it a ruby? Here, we can look it up. I feel like a real podcast with the ability to just search stuff while we're
Sardior.
That is an interesting name as well.
Yeah, in the beginning it was in dragon religion, the elegy of the first world or whatever. There's Bahamut, Tiamat, and there was Sardior. But then something happened to Sardior, and his fragmented consciousness is what became the gem dragons. Or at least that's what they believe. I think it's kind of cool that dragons have their own like whole religion now, because I love lore. I don't really know how much it actually adds to your personal game.
True.
I know I'm not using it, but I like knowing
You're
it.
just like just collecting the knowledge. You're just a little Nothic squirming around.
I thought I was a goblin now.
Yeah, well, canonically, I think you are a goblin now. But yeah, I probably wouldn't do anything with that. And so what's the deal? Is Tiamat really just like a Hydra? How does that work?
No.
But she just has a bunch of heads.
She's a 5-headed dragon.
But then what's the difference?
Hydras, first of all, I think usually have 8 heads.
But they can just have as many as you cut off or whatever, right? Like, or don't.
But no, she's not a Hydra. Though now in Fizban's they introduced a dragon-headed Hydra.
What? So then what's supposed to be the difference between the Hydra just has the heads. It doesn't have breath weapons,
right,
I guess.
Yeah, but then the dragon-headed Hydra does have breath weapons.
Okay. But then that's the same thing as Tiamat. But on a lesser scale, of course.
Yeah. Actually, I think Hydras are monstrosities. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Monstrosity is such a silly type to me. Because monstrosity
it's kind of like a catch-all.
Exactly. That's how I described it, actually, in the one video I did about this. Because it's like, hey, here are a bunch of things that would just be beasts, but because they are known mythical creatures, we're just calling them monstrosities.
Yeah, like
but
an
they should just be a regular living creature.
An owlbear could totally be a beast. I think, so in the real world, a creature like an owlbear would not be able to reproduce. It's kind of like a mule. Well, I think what would make them monstrosities is, this is a total tangent. Never mind. Let's go back to dragon.
That's for our next podcast about monster hybridization.
Mating habits.
Yeah. I'll say that the one thing that really stood out to me about this book, I guess there were a couple things. The death of a dragon and the other section, draconic gifts, which I definitely want to use draconic gifts. And it kind of goes right alongside with Death of a Dragon. Literally just, okay, here are the ways the landscape and stuff can kind of change when they die. That's always been mentioned in dragon, like especially ancient dragon, like regional effects and stuff anyway. But I guess the big one for me was draconic gifts. And that was saying when your party slays a dragon, or these can basically be boons from a really powerful dragon. But that magic, because dragons are such a force of like power in the world, that it literally becomes diffused to other creatures, either other dragons that it's associated with, because like the weird multiverse stuff, or the creatures who kill it, for example. So I totally would use that in my future games, where like if the characters slay a dragon, maybe the one who delivers a killing blow, or maybe a random one or something, or all of them get a little effect, but they gain some kind of power based like from the dragon itself.
I think that really adds to the slaying of a dragon, because slaying a dragon should feel like more than just killing something.
Yeah.
It should be important, and it should like do something permanent.
I mean, yeah, one thing I like too was how it explicitly said like an ancient dragon's hoard can like cause nations to rise and fall, just based on the amount of wealth that it would have accumulated over centuries and centuries. Yeah, which was also a little funny because it made me think about like, how are they really getting all this treasure? Like, how does a dragon actually collect gold coins?
Yeah, I think mostly it's offerings in my mind, especially for metallic dragons who are traditionally good. Don't go out like pillaging necessarily. A black dragon, on the other hand, would totally just steal everything.
Yeah, black dragons just want to. They were the ones that like suffering the most. Yeah. They're kind of like the hags of dragons. But I really liked also, or I don't know, something that was very interesting to me that I never really realized before was that it said like all true dragons covet and desire wealth, which I thought was interesting because I always associate the like greed basically with being evil, and therefore just with the chromatic dragons. Yeah. But it said that.
But look at it this way.
Yeah, there was a distinction. So
if a dragon's power is associated with the size of its hoard, a good dragon could do more for the force of good if they have a larger hoard and therefore more power.
That's a great way to look at it. And it did say that with metallic dragons, it's more about like collecting cool artifacts than just like accumulating gold per se.
In my setting, I have the one dragon who like rules a hold, basically. Yeah. And they look at their hold as their hoard.
Yeah, okay.
So everything in there, all the infrastructure, that's all theirs. And while they do physically have the treasury in their own personal castle, which is also shaped like them, like that wealth, they distribute it to just like raise the value of all their land. But this is a good aligned metallic dragon.
Right. And I actually like that a lot. Like that's a really cool idea for metallic dragons who are gonna associate with people, because most of them do, I think. With that perspective, it also then will make them super protective of that community as well.
Yeah, so it's also like their territory.
Yeah.
Their hoard, their territory, all their power in one place.
Yeah. What's like a gripe with dragons that you have?
I don't like how each type of dragon basically has a certain personality trait. Like all black dragons share a love of suffering.
Yeah.
All what is it? Copper.
I'll just go down the list. Here are the really brief highlight notes. I like wrote a single word that I took away from like the descriptions of each dragon. So black, cruel; blue, vain; green, deceitful; red, covetous; white, brutal; brass, extroverted; bronze, militant; copper, pranks; gold, righteous; and silver, helpful.
Yeah, so each type of dragon has a shared personality trait, which I find odd because like no other race is like that.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Because then it's like, oh, if I'm playing a black dragonborn, am I supposed to be like a bad guy now? Like, it's almost like alignment, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You can have your evil chromatic dragons, I guess, and your good metallic ones.
And I think it's actually worse with gem dragons. Because not only do gem dragons have an assigned personality, they also have an assigned interest.
What does that mean? I didn't even read that part.
Topaz dragons are obsessed with death. Not necessarily in an evil way, but in like a life cycle, things must die for other things to live kind of way. Emerald dragons are obsessed with collecting information about different cultures. Amethyst dragons love to hunt aberrations. They
Yeah.
all have a thing like
Yeah,
that, which is so weird.
I
Like,
don't-
why?
yeah, I don't
they
like that
have
kind of
no
stuff in
like
general.
history. Like, what is the amethyst dragon's history with aberrations that makes him want to hunt
Yeah.
aberrations?
Yeah, that's so true. And let's be honest, like, if you're going to use a chromatic dragon, like as a villain, say, you're probably either going to pick which kind based on the environment that you want it to go in, or the breath weapon that you think is the coolest to use against your party.
Yeah.
Right? It should have really just been like, here are some personality types you can ascribe to a villainous dragon. Pick one of these for any kind of chromatic dragon you pick.
Yeah.
Because who really...
Yeah. Other than that, I do really like gem dragons, though. I like how they're kind of weird.
Yeah. If anything, then like there being these gem dragons, what it made me think about is like the distinction to me between chromatic and metallic is just this weird, like they're set up to be opposites, but why is like earth tone colors the opposite of these kinds of metal? And I hate how specifically, what is it? I think it's just brass. Isn't brass, maybe I should have looked this up before. I think brass is like an alloy. Like that's not even found in nature.
Yeah.
So it's like that always like rubbed me a weird way. Like why is, I don't know.
Yeah, I think like the color thing is really the thing that stands apart. Because like metal and crystal, I get that.
To me, yeah, if they were based more on like other elements or...
And I feel like all dragons should be shiny anyway.
Right. A green dragon could just be like an old copper dragon or something.
That's actually cool. Metamorphizing dragons.
Just like with the hags.
Like a copper dragon turns evil and becomes a green dragon from Verdigris.
There was something about like, I mean, one of them was that white dragons, like when they're super old, they actually turn kind of blue. And which I found interesting because there's an ancient dragon in Frost Maiden and there's like art for it and it doesn't really look bluish to me. But, and not like totally blue, but enough that it helps it like blend in with ice and snow.
Yeah.
Which was cool. How they become more like one with the environment. I thought that was really neat because not only then do we have the environment being shaped around the dragon, around its lair, like the regional effects, whatever, but we have the dragon also becoming this like force of nature. I thought that was really neat.
And I could kind of see that working with like green dragons too.
Oh yeah.
Just like growing vegetation on themselves. Like moss. Stuff.
And that kind of stuff.
Poisonous flowers and mushrooms.
For older ones, you should totally have like snails stuck to your black dragon that's coming up out of the swamp and stuff. It
drips ooze.
Yeah. Just because like it shows it not only becoming like one with that environment, but it also, especially for like an old green dragon that's going to have stuff growing on it, it evokes its age as well, which is always a way to like, especially in fantasy, just show something's power, just make it really old.
Yeah, and that's also kind of what happens in this lore that's been introduced. If a dragon absorbs multiple copies of itself across the multiverse, they become like a super dragon, basically. And then
I wish that was what it was called.
Yeah, they do start, you know, a red dragon just has like fire coming out of it all the time and like lava in its footsteps.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And
great worms. They're called great worms.
And I like that too because I guess like as I was suggesting before, it kind of leans into like elemental magic stuff.
Yeah.
Which I always like. There not really being a distinction between like elemental stuff and arcane stuff. Just it's all...
Which is what gem dragons are. So I guess gem dragons just become more arcane.
Oh, they're supposed to be just arcane?
Yeah, because their things are like force damage, psychic damage, necrotic damage, radiant damage.
Okay.
They are the esoteric dragons.
Wow.
Yeah.
Doesn't esoteric just kind of mean like...
mysterious.
Yeah, but like the content of the classic America's favorite show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interests.
Exactly. So it's like, here are these things you don't need to know about. I think what it kind of boils down to for me, like, do we need each chromatic dragon to have such distinct kind of personalities, like you said, all these distinct features between them? 5 different kinds of chromatic dragons, 5 different metallic, and now 5 gem, I assume, right? I guess realistically...
Don't forget, now there's also the moon dragon, or the moonstone dragon.
Oh.
which is the opposite of a shadow dragon. It's a dragon that's
Nice.
been in the Feywild.
I like that. That's a cool thing to add.
But I think instead of making it a template like they did for the shadow dragon, they actually made it like its own stat block.
Oh, I like that less now.
I would have preferred.
That's what, like, I'm looking at this, like, why don't we just have shadow dragon template, moon dragon template, chromatic dragon template? Well, I guess if they're all templates, what are you going to map them onto? Maybe that's a little hole in my logic there. I think I'm being a little hypocritical because I do want dragons to be more pervasive in my games and stuff. But
the minimalist in you.
Yeah, I don't like a lot of options.
I
don't like a lot. That's just a personal thing. I'd love there to be one kind of dragon and then like some related types of creatures or something that I can be inspired by and then create my own thing. Instead of just like, here are 50 different kinds of dragons that you can take that all act a certain way, and one of them is exactly almost what you're looking for. Like, that's the thing about a lot of options, is it never really hits exactly what you want. At least that's how I, just general worldview, look at, like, when you're presented with a lot of options.
Yeah, I'm constantly changing stat blocks to
Yeah.
be more what I need.
And the thing is, then I have to, like, read through all these types to find which one is the closest. Whereas if they just gave me 3 to start out with, I would just pick one real quick and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And would it be, like, perfect at the end of the day? No. But is it going to be perfect at the end of the day when they present me with that much minutia? Probably not. I don't know. That's just me, like, ranting a little bit. Tell me about a dragon from a game that you've ran.
I mean, there was the one time that you guys just turned into giant apes and beat it into the ground.
Yeah,
So it was a random encounter. There was another one that I wanted to run, but then you guys just didn't go to that place. And that's it. I've never had a really cool dragon encounter. Kind of setting one up, though.
Right.
I can't talk about it.
Right. Shh. Secrets. Yeah, I guess I've actually used an okay amount of dragons in my games. In the first big homebrew campaign that I ran, you guys fought a green dragon. I think it was an adult. And then immediately, like, that was kind of the first stage of a battle where then you fought thing. It was kind of like a tabaxi, but it was like a servant of Malar.
Yeah.
And it had this item that made it sort of dragon-like, so it could fly, and it had this, like, gross acid breath weapon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've always liked dragons just being this ancient thing in the world, having, like, relics tied to them, having the supreme wealth tied to them. I find that really interesting. And I think that just adds to, like, their mystique and their power, like, all that stuff. Like, that's what makes them so mythical and so fantastic and, like, an important part of the game overall. And one of the only, it's just coming to mind now, one of the only other times I've used a dragon was in Icefire Peak, when you just killed it, basically without it knowing you were there.
Yeah, I was overpowered, though, with...
Yeah, but I beefed up the dragon
Amalia.
a little bit. Or wait, no, actually, no, I didn't. I made a beefed up version of the dragon because of that. Dragons should almost always almost kill one of your party members. If it's a villain, again. Oh yeah, because the other...
Sometimes if it's not a villain.
Well, maybe, I guess, yeah, because the one other time that you guys encountered a dragon in that other campaign was the, like, guy who was a gold dragon.
Yeah, I knew it right away, though.
Yeah. I just described him as having, like, golden eyes, I think.
And I was like, that guy's a dragon!
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think you, like, detected magic right away, and I just described, like...
An aura.
Some really powerful magical aura. I mean, and it wasn't, I don't know, he wasn't super important, I guess. And you have your important dragon who rolls over that part of town, or like a whole town.
It's a whole
country?
A whole hold. So kind of a country within a
state?
country. Yeah, it's a state, I guess. And they really love gnomes.
Yeah.
And gnome culture. So one day they were just like, I want to be
I'm just gonna rule some
monarch
gnomes, please.
of the gnomes. And just like showed up there and they were like, cool.
Okay, if you were a
You're
dragon...
president of the gnomes now.
If you were a dragon, what kind of dragon would you be? Do you want me to read the words again? Can I pick one first for you?
Sure.
I think you would be a copper dragon. Because you prank me all the time.
I am the best at pranks.
Yeah, but it's pretty weak competition against me.
Yeah. Remember the time I wrote pranked on like a banana or something?
It was a piece of celery. A really floppy piece of celery.
And I put it on your computer.
Yeah, that was I don't even know if that's a prank, to be honest. But I'll call it
And the
one.
other time when I just Googled pranked.
Yeah, that was really good.
Computer.
That was really good. I think maybe a silver dragon, because I try to be really helpful.
You are helpful.
One weird thing about the silver dragon, though, that I didn't like is I don't think it had a specific environment. It didn't have a specific environment or a specific type of movement.
They love hanging out with people the most out of all dragons, so I think they kind of prefer an urban environment.
Yeah.
But their breath weapon is cold.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing. I think in the white dragon part, it talked about them like running into silver, but then silver, I don't think it explicitly said they live in Arctic places. But it would make sense. What kind of dragon would Squeaks be?
Gross one.
She'd be a freaking black dragon, living in a swamp, being cruel. That's her all day.
She would be like the elder brain dragon.
Ew. Oh yeah, isn't there a mind flayer dragon?
Yeah, it's an elder brain can like wiggle itself under a dragon's skin and like put tentacles out and just like take over the dragon.
That's so gross.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Isn't there like an Underdark one too? Because I thought I saw some art of that.
Yeah, I think there's a deep dragon.
Deep dragon. That sounds right. There should have just been like a chromatic dragon stat block, a metallic dragon stat block, and sure, a gem dragon stat block. And then some templates or like tables of different breath weapons you can give them, different colors they can have, different personalities they could have. But it doesn't need to be 5 stat blocks for each of the 5, right?
Yeah.
Or is it 4 for each? Warbling, young, adult,
and
ancient. Yeah.
Yeah.
4 types of stat blocks.
That is a lot.
So there's 60 dragons right off the bat? Okay, how do we end this? Any quirky little joke? Any little prank?
Like hags, there should always be lead up to a dragon. Don't try to do a dragon as a random encounter. That's silly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess just choose wisely when you choose your type of dragon. But don't be afraid to maybe a little play on words here, like color out of the lines a little bit. And just take traits from other dragons. Because it doesn't freaking matter. And unless your players are obsessed with these books as much as Grace, they won't even know the difference.
Stop building.
Yeah, I didn't even get to say keep building yet. Crap, that means everyone has to stop building for a month.
Yep.
Sheesh.
Goodbye.